we'll lead you through what's going to happen.
Okay, good.
But so basically, but yes, we're recording, and we'll eventually, Pete will edit this, and he's going to drop in references or pictures or things when you might mention them.
Okay.
And that will be part of it. But yes, consider this a working session. And this is really for you to kind of like just sort of explore and talk with us a little bit about what it was that drew you to that particular item. But just to set it up at the top, this is Mega Conversations, and it's a time where we have conversations about inspiration and where it comes from, and it all kind of comes from an invitation. We ask musicians to look through the Mega website, Mega website, and just kind of click through until they see something that sparks an idea for a song. So we wanted to talk to you both a little bit sort of separately, and then we'll let you two ask questions, and Pete and I might interject here and there to, to kind of explore a little bit more or go down another road, but we'll keep the conversation to around 30 or 45 minutes. And we'll just enjoy kind of talking about the spark of inspiration.
Okay.
So, Laurelyn Dossett is a musician and a songwriter, one of the most sought after collaborators in North Carolina and beyond. She has participated in original, plays with music. She's collaborated with the North Carolina Symphony. Name a few.
Levon Helm, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say so much I collaborated with Levon, but he did record one of my songs, and I did get to meet him and sing backup a couple times up at the Ramble. But yeah.
There was a Grammy involved in there somewhere, wasn't there?
He got 2 Grammys for albums that the song was on. The song didn't get a Grammy, and I didn't.
No, it was all about that song. All about that song.
Well, thank you for that acknowledgement. Yeah. Yeah. So
it is a great song.
Thank you.
And then Pete, you want to introduce Brian?
Brian Crean, what should we say? Renaissance man, just a incredibly creative sculptor. I believe he did some printmaking too, if I'm correct. Photography, writer. The man has read more books than I knew existed. Just he's takes in as much knowledge as he can, and then it comes out. So happy to have him on the mega gallery with some of his sculptural works, and maybe in the future we'll get some photography as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Happy to be here.
All right, so Laurelyn, tell us the story. Tell us a story about opening the website, looking through things. Why did you stop on this particular piece, and what was it? Just tell us that story.
Well, I mean, as I first experienced the website, I really enjoyed it. I really like, there's quite a bit of painting that is more kind of what you might put in the primitive art or outsider art category. And I actually wrote the music for a play called Radiant Abundant at Triad Stage, where the primary character was a visionary artist. And so Preston Lane and I have been all over, we went all over the Southeast and up to Baltimore to the Visionary Art Museum. And I went down to Atlanta to the museum there. And, and we also went to, meet some artists on site whose homes and where they live are all, made into art in all kinds of different ways. And so I was drawn right into the whole site, like Church Going Mule and David Childers paintings and things. I was like, oh yeah, these are my people. And so when I got to the sculpture, that was just like, okay, well, that's it. And I think it's because so Molly knows this because she spent a lot of time where I live now. but, well, it was a combination of things. I think it's it felt like, it looks like stone on the website. I know it's bronze, but it was I spend a lot of time with stones now, and I look at them for long periods of time. I collect them. They're all over my house. Because I live on an active mountain stream. And so I think what I would love is to be able to touch the sculpture. I haven't been able to do that yet, and maybe, I don't know if that's possible or not, but it just felt tactile. And so that was my initial response. And then I have some other responses to the story that might be in that, but I don't know how far you want me to go. So
I want you to go as far as you will when you write a song, really, I guess. Like, what did you hear? Was there a narrative that came to mind, or what happened?
Well, in that initial time, it was just, it's so still, and she's just looking, and she's not touching, and she's not doing anything with the box, which at the time I thought of as a stone. I didn't look at the title of the sculpture, so I didn't know that it was called Pandora's Box. Is it called that? Yeah.
Pandora's Gift, actually.
Pandora's Gift. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I like that better, actually. Pandora's Gift. Anyway, I didn't look at that. I just saw the sculpture, and so to me, it was that she was staring at a stone, initially. And I don't know whether I want to move away from that or not, and I don't know whether I want to, because the Pandora story is also, there's a lot to that story. So I can, we can talk more about that as we go. So, but that was my initial, I related to this woman or girl, just being very still and looking, and just looking. Right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm curious, have you felt a spark of an idea for a song when you look at these stones?
You mean just generally in my life?
Yeah. Or what does that give you when you look at stones? Like, when you look at these rocks?
Well, they're just, I feel like I can just see all of time, in them. They're so old, and they've been there for so long, or they've traveled here from far away down the water, so I don't, yeah, it's not, I'm not complicated about it.
No, I totally get it. I have right now on our windowsill, I have stones that are from my travels all over the place.
Yeah, I do that too. Bring them from everywhere.
Yeah.
Can I hate to interrupt, but my dog is scratching at the door. Let me go grab her real quick. Okay. I'll be right back.
I'm gonna look at all her plates.
She loves.
Good girl.
Yeah, we have, when I was younger, my father traveled a lot for work, and he traveled to Egypt a lot, actually.
Huh.
So one summer, or it was maybe over Christmas break, the whole family got to go to Egypt.
Wow.
And I'll probably get my mom in trouble right here. We were in King Tut's tomb, like 20 people. And my mom has this stone thing as well. And I see my mom slowly moving down, crouching down while the tour guide is talking. I'm like, oh no, I know exactly what she's doing. And she took a stone out of King Tut's tomb. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucky.
Yeah. It's funny, just even as you said that, in my previous life, I used to spend a lot of time in Italy. My former husband taught in Rome in the summers. And so we would be there. And of course, there's all this amazing art there. And I actually started, I need to find that notebook. I started a bunch of writings around, there's a hill. It's basically a landfill that is made up of ancient clay olive oil vessels from Greece. So the olive oil would come from Greece to Rome, you know, on the river. So this hill, I mean, it's flat there, and the hill is next to the river, and it's, you know, got buildings and things on it now, but underneath all it is stacked, you know, these broken stacked clay vessels that were, you know, really tall. That, to me, that was like the most interesting art in Rome. It's the piles of clay. So, you know, I don't know what that means, but.
Oh, that's gorgeous. So something, an object like that had such a utilitarian purpose, and then cast aside.
It's pretty cool. Later when we're done, I'll find the name of it and send you guys some pictures. So anyway. Okay. I'm done.
All right, Pete, you want to ask Brian where his inspiration from?
One thing I did while Laurelyn was talking, that tactile sense of Brian's sculpture, I hope you do get to see them in person, because you can actually see fingerprints in them.
Nice.
So Brian, if you want to kind of talk about maybe how you made them and also why you made them.
Sure. Yeah, I started the body of work actually in graduate school. And then when graduate school finished, I wasn't really done. You know, like I was like, I still have more to do. I have more of these to make. I was studying the human form. I wanted to do small figures. I have been interested in philosophy and Taoism, and a lot of kind of mysterious things in the past. And I always kind of imagined them as more yin than yang. So I think that's why they were kind of feminine in spirit. And I loved hearing everything that you guys were just talking about, because I want them to be about searching, traveling through the world, finding your way. And to me, that's what they were. You know, some of the figures were carrying little bags. Some were searching out and finding things. Some were waking up from sleeping on their travels. And they just kind of evolved in their own little story. And I like to try to keep it vague so that people can bring their own feeling and stories to them. So, yeah, I try to keep them somewhat mysterious. You know, like I don't want any of them to have like some definitive statement. You know, they're all just kind of the earth, searching, finding themselves, finding things around them. Maybe the things that they find are not really out there, but they're in here, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where they came from. The name Pandora, that actually means all giving. The original meaning of Pandora is pan, all, Doran is giving or gifts. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, Laurelyn, that you like urns and those types of things, because the original Pandora came from the earth. She was a goddess who came from the earth with an urn and not a box or anything like that. So she came forth bringing gifts. And somehow that was twisted with a writer, I think in maybe around the 11 or 1200s. I don't remember exactly when. That would make sense.
When all those stories had to be turned into basically male-led
Yes.
stories rather than female-led stories. Yeah, that would make sense. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Okay.
So yeah, Pandora, I mean, that name and that analogy or that kind of story about Pandora's box she opens and the evil comes out. That was like total patriarchal, something that came later.
Yeah.
So I loved when I did more research, because some people would say, oh, it's like Pandora's box. It's like they're finding these things and they're going to open up the evil. And I'm like, no, they're not opening up evil, So I wanted there to be more, I wanted to hearken back to that original meaning when I chose the name.
I like that. Okay.
Of gifts, bringing forth gifts. So, and the searching quality and the innocence in that, and the just wanting to understand and learn, so.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, great.
What's interesting is before this conversation, Pete and I were talking, and I don't know, I guess I was talking about you, Laurelyn, and I said to him, I was like, she has to be one of the most generous persons that I know. Like, she's always giving, like giving food, or you're giving, little pieces of art or beauty, and it's like, or, or rocks, sharing this place. So one of the things that we're finding as we have these conversations is these little soul matches and synergies that seem to be happening between the artists. And that's so interesting to me, just kind of the subconscious nature of the conversation that happens between the looker and the thing that's been made. So it just kind of blows my mind. But Brian, I did want to ask, you said you were reticent about sharing the stories about these specific pieces, but I do wonder if you'd be willing to kind of be specific about this particular piece in general, because I do wonder about your process. Do you hear a story, or do you just stay in the subconscious and stay in your hands? Like, what happens for you? Where does that spark of inspiration come for you when you start making?
It's a good question. I don't know if I have a conscious creative process. I can be very cerebral about books and learning. But when I make art and visual art, I feel like it's kind of a different language. That's when I explore things that maybe I can't explain as well in a story or something more clear. So yeah, I don't know that I have a specific, other than what I've kind of already mentioned. I don't know that I had a specific story about this particular sculpture, about this particular Pandora, like she is, like I said, she's searching, and I don't know what she's searching for, and maybe she doesn't either, and maybe she's learning, and I like to leave it open. I really do. I like to explore mysterious things and things that you don't know about, and you don't know where the rock has been, and you don't know how far it's traveled, or you don't know exactly who this little entity, this little being is. I think mystery is an important part of life. So it's not that I'm unwilling to tell some hidden story about it. It's that I don't really have one, like
it doesn't need one. It doesn't need more information.
Yeah. I want people to bring their own into it, so I want to leave it. Like, I imagine, maybe she's wondering if she should touch it, or maybe she, like the indecision and that kind of searching and learning. And
well, she has her arm back, her right arm. And you don't know whether she's thinking, should I, or whether she's already approached and pulled it back and said, no, let's just let it be. Like, it's got an action in it, but you don't know exactly what the action is.
And I try to do that so much in my work.
That's awesome.
I try I tried to do that in graduate school to the frustration of all the faculty, because they would be like, well, what is she doing? Or why is she doing, and it's like, exactly, and they're like, well, you need to make a more clear statement. It's like, the statement I'm making is that it isn't clear, and that's hard to do, like it's hard to catch something, it's hard to hint at things. People yell and explain and theorize. We all do. I do. Everybody does. But what about the times that we can't do that, or we don't do that? Or what about those times, where we don't know and we're trying to figure it out? And what about those uncertainties? And I guess that's what I'm exploring in the work,
So can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I think what the sculpture was already suggesting to me was a lot of space, and it feels, I associate the stone and the with water, and not a linear story and not a lot of words, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel it doesn't, there are stories, and I've written them, and Molly's written them, that are very, this is the beginning, this is the middle, and this is the end, and this is the moral, but this doesn't feel like that at all.
Mhm.
I don't know what it is yet, but it's not that.
Maybe more like a poem, like a visual poem, like there's value in not naming something exactly,
Right.
at hinting at things.
There is it is a songwriting approach that, and there's an episode of Cocaine and Rhinestones, I think, that specifically goes into this a little bit, and it's a kind of a songwriting approach. It's the Billy Joe song, where the entire narrative is taking you somewhere and you actually don't really know what happens. That there's something that's thrown off, but it's all about what kind of happens around this moment that nobody knows. And so this has become it's such a huge, awesome songwriting approach. And I think what I hear Laurelyn saying is is almost even more abstract than that. But it is one of my favorite ways, and I've never done it, but it's a great way to write songs, because it does allow for a relationship between the person and the object, because they can fill in the blanks. You're not spelling it out for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can use, imagery, both actual language and musical and, instrumental imagery that is also non-specific, that, people can conjure whatever they conjure from it. So, yeah. It's fun. When do I get to see it?
What?
When do I get to see it?
You can borrow it. You can borrow it anytime. You can keep it while you write the song if you want.
Really?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. She can come live here for a little while?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That would be wonderful.
How big?
I have her right here. Would you like to see it?
Oh, look.
Oh,
It's just right there. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh, hey,
There
Brian,
you go.
say something so the camera switches to you so we can see it.
Okay. This is what she looks like.
wow.
I'll set her back on the table by the light on the bookshelf. I have a few of them on my bookshelf.
Okay.
A few Pandoras or a few sculptures in that series?
A few sculptures in that series.
Nice. Yeah.
So I have a question for Brian.
Okay.
Just because I went to your website and was reading about you and stuff, and most of the art of yours that I'm seeing is photography, and so because I'm not a visual artist at all, I don't like, those feel very different to me. Photography and bronze sculpture feel like really different. Is that true? Do you experience them differently, or are they different?
Yeah, I mean, they're different. It's a different expression, you know. I think, you know, when I was in graduate school and then shortly after, it's much more tactile, you know, like I modeled in wax, and you make these small sculptures in your hands, and they're kind of part of you and come out of you. I think photography is a little bit more as an observer, at least for me it is. And it's maybe a little bit more about light and value and some of those formal characteristics, two-dimensional characteristics. But I also love books, and one of the reasons why I've become more and more interested in photography is that it's an expression of that I can easily put in book form. And also I try to, again, it gets back to the mystery thing. That's why I like the black and whites and darks and lights and a little bit of interesting angles and ways of looking at the world. But yeah, they're different. They really are different. I've also found that photography, when you don't have a big studio and a big foundry, you know, it's a media. Writing and photography are really work well together. And I've just been focused on that more of late. I still have a few sculptures sitting around that I'll pick up every few months just to make my fingers feel more active. But yeah, it's definitely very different.
Well, even as, you know, we, whether, let me try to start that sentence better. We're living in a really unusual time where we can't be in galleries and we can't touch sculptures and we can't walk all around circles of things in person, you know, but photography and writing is something you can still share, and it is still a way to connect. So I don't know that has anything to do with it, but if you are an artist during this time and you don't a way of expressing art that we can do basically through social media or through computers, you know, you're not able to speak, you know. So
yeah I do enjoy different expressions. Like there's some things that I can express in writing that it doesn't work so well in a sculpture, and there's things that I really love exploring almost in, if I were the sculpture looking at the rock or the gift, you know, like part of it's self-referential, and that like I'm a photographer, I like exploring the world, I like traveling, you know. So maybe it's as simple as that, you know. I think I just
there is a parallel when I look at your sculptures and your photography. You're both have these moments of calm, these moments of the way that you're taking a photo of an object is you take a very unique perspective of it, and you capture it in an intimate kind of way, which to me runs tightly parallel with the sculptures. You know, I think Pandora, the sculpture there, would be a huge fan of your photography.
Do you need to go out again? Is Maggie outside?
Yeah, she is.
I'm going to let June out just a second.
And Brian, we'll ask you about your influences while she's doing that. So who have been your sculpture influences?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, it's probably not surprising that the sculptor I like the most wasn't really known as a sculptor, and that was Edgar Degas. He was more about pastels and drawing and painting, but he also did a series of sculpture that he kind of had just around his studio. He only exhibited one sculpture, which everybody knows, the ballerina. But a lot of his sculptural work was just kind of related and studio work that he didn't show. I've always been interested in the human form, you know, and so sculpturally, I really like Degas waxes, and I also enjoyed working with wax a little bit more so than clay.
What's the difference? What's the difference for you?
I think it's as simple as I like the way the wax feels in my hands. It's I would mix it with actually Vaseline to soften it. And there's different modeling waxes you can use, but it's just kind of sticky and small, and it's easy to deal with, and I don't have to be worried about it drying out like clay or using water. And I'm kind of a neat guy. I'm not real big into the ceramic studio with all the clay and the mud and the stuff. I like just having my little pile of wax pieces and sit in my reading chair and work that way. So I think it's just a function of, it just suits my personality, I think. I think sometimes people with artists, you hear about some artists who will say like, well, when did you know you were a painter? Or when did you know that you were this? And they'll say something kind of silly and easy. They'll be like, well, I always liked the smell of paint, you know, or I always liked the whatever, you know. And I think I just liked wax, you know, like I like wax better than the messiness of the clay.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Mhm.
What about you, Laurelyn? What are some of your what influences will you draw from when you write this song?
The Creek and the Stones.
So non-traditional influences.
I don't know if they're traditional or non-traditional, but they're not, it's not like, oh, this sounds like a certain artist that I want to emulate. No, it'll come from here.
So the way you just said that pretty definitively, when did that become, because you haven't always had the Creek and the Stones. So
No, but that's only because I wasn't able to have my own Creek and Stones.
right, but
I
you
used to-
but you
I
wrote
used to
songs
travel.
before that.
Honestly, I mean, I'm being quite honest. My work has pretty much always been inspired by flora and fauna, by the sky, by nature. You know, when I wrote the music to Blackbeard, which, you know, sounds kind of silly because that's like a silly pirate story, but I went to a cabin on the Outer Banks and watched the winter sea, you know, and because I don't know what that sky looks like or what it smells like. And I stayed there for a week. When I wrote, you know, I've gone to spend weeks at a time in mountain places because I needed to write about that, you know. So I am, or to be inspired by it, you know, or to be quiet, just to be quiet, you know.
So you could get direct influence from those winter waves because you're writing
Absolutely.
about that, but then you can also, it sounds like on a larger scale, you're tapping into kind of the energy of nature.
Both things, yes.
Okay.
And there's a Walden connection there with Brian, right? Like Brian, how much does Walden play into your creative works?
I think indirectly it does. I mean, I think in the sense, of course, I don't think about Thoreau when I'm making an artwork, you know, but I think the simplicity, I've always been drawn to simplicity. I think Thoreau is actually more about, as much about simplicity as he is nature. And I think both of those things go hand in hand. And that's not to say that I don't love nature. I've loved nature in the national parks and hiking and whatnot. But when I think of Thoreau, I really think of his efficient, simple, paring life down to the basic essentials. And I think in that way, in that sensibility is still the way that I make art. I think that's the way I make photographs. That's the way I make sculpture, trying to get down to that core, simple, elemental kind of mysterious thing, spirit that's underneath everything, you know, that kind of the basis, get to the essentials, I guess.
There's I just was waiting for you to say the word essential. And I knew you would. And and then you said elemental. I was like, so I can't remember. I was reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez poems, the odes. There's a book of odes, and I love them. They're about everyday things, and you know, they're a little longish, and you can really hear a little bit of his, you know, pompous personality coming through, but there's also just a lot of noticing the everyday world and noticing very simple everyday things, and then taking those and distilling that into the most essential little, you know, human emotion or daily activity, you know. So I actually have in a note, you know, when I write, I have you know, I have little notes that I write to myself to remind myself what I'm trying to do. And one of them is fear not, and that comes from the notebook of Ola Belle Reed, who is a North Carolina songwriter. And I saw her notebooks from her son before she had passed away. He had not passed away yet, and the notebooks were still available with all these her handwritten lyrics. And at the top of every page, it said "Fear not."
Wow.
So that one I use, and the other is just the word essential. You know, just just keep pulling things away and get down to the core of it. So it sounds very similar intentions, different mediums.
One of the women that we went to graduate school with, she said, and she kind of laughed. I was making these sculptures and I was making prints and images, and I was just exploring and just figuring it out and the early stages. And she was like, they're just all little essences, you know? And I thought to myself, that is what they are. They're nothing clear. They're nothing, we're all mysterious and underneath it all. Like when you get to the very core of something, it becomes harder and harder to name, you know? And I think thinking of them as little essences, what is an essence, you know? Like it's so, it's we don't know exactly, and maybe that's the beauty of it.
Okay.
I love it. I feel like that's the perfect button.
Oh.
And once again, I'm just so shocked by like the little soul matches, the little soulmate things that happen when we watch these two things come together.
It just makes me wonder, because like David Childers and I just did one of these, and it seemed like we threw our fishing line into the same river. And you two, it's just, yeah, same deal. So I wonder, what is that river and how are we tapping into it, you know? And how is it that you are tapping into the same river? So it's just, yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
There was a super interesting, I don't know if it was an art historian or art critic I read sometime, and I don't remember who it was, but they say that we make things, we create things out of a certain consciousness, and the only people who are able to appreciate those things are people with a similar consciousness. So someone who's maybe extremely politically minded in the traditional, like the sense, will be very drawn to political things, you know, and someone who's drawn to more poetic things will will be drawn to those things, you know, someone that's more poetic or, you know, but I think it's cool to see, and it's cool to hear you both say that there's these connections that happen when you're drawn to something, we're drawn to it because the person who made that is kind of like us. Otherwise we wouldn't recognize it.
But even that is that specific, like the urn, that kind of stuff, you know, like David Childers pulled out, not knowing where I grew up and what my first job was. He pulled out both of those things and somehow put them in a song. It's like, where does that, what? You know,
Yeah.
and y'all are
Yeah.
putting out specific stuff. So it's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
It must be, their inspiration must come from recognition, like some sort of element of recognition. It's a reciprocity, an instant reciprocity, which is so great.
You know, when I first landed on the photograph of the sculpture, I knew that that was it. And Pete asked me why, and I was like, I don't know.
Right.
Why? If that's a prerequisite, I can't do this job.
Oh, really ask you that?
You did. In a text.
And then now it makes just so much sense though. Like it's so obvious.
Yeah.
You know, why you were drawn to that.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
All right.
Us this morning, and
We'll talk more, right?
yeah.
Sounds
And
good.
Laurelyn, we
We'll
need to
figure
figure
out
out how you get Pandora.
Right. Well, I don't know if you want to stop the recording or we just keep talking about that. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
we'll edit it out. Yeah.
Yeah, you can edit it out.